Hi, friends, and welcome to Cozy Up Creative Design Studio Card 1. Here we are going to make card number 1 4 different ways. Let's get started. You'll see here that I have my Versamat, and I'm going to put the stamping cushion side up. So you know it's a grid line on one side, a stamp cushion on the other side. And I'm going to bring in my all-purpose mat because we are going to be doing some inking and sponging on those leaves and such, and even some heat embossing. So you know this mat is heat safe as well. So I'm bringing that in over my Versamat for the stamp cushion. Next, I'm going to start edge distressing all of these pieces here except for the die cut leaves with the toffee ink. And you're going to notice that I am using the sponge, our round sponge that I've cut into quarters, to do my edge distressing here. I know that we have the blending brush, and you all know that the blending brushes are my absolute favorite, right? But they are just that, a brush. And I find that when I do the edge distressing, that the paper tends to go between the bristles, and I do not get the effect that I like. So I do prefer to use the round sponge cut into quarters here on the edge distressing of my pieces. So I'm going to speed it up here in just a minute. I'm going to do all these pieces except for those leaves, and you'll notice I'm going to also give you a close-up look at that mocha, the mocha pieces there, because you'll notice that when I cut them, my blade on my cutter was maybe not the greatest, and you really can see the white core in the paper. And watch when I use the toffee ink to edge distress that, it just blends it all in so that white core is not so harsh there. Can you see the difference? Such a difference it makes. Another purpose for edge distressing, other than, going over the white core here like I'm doing on this piece, but it also helps put a visual line or a border between patterns. So when you're layering different patterns, even if that edge distress is ever so subtle, it makes a difference for your eyes to have that little bit of border around your pattern. So here you can see the difference between those two. All right, my friends, I'm going to finish up edge distressing all of these pieces, and tell us below, are you watching today or are you crafting along with us today? Now we are ready to start stamping. And do you know the importance of seasoning your stamp sets before you use them? I know I've started to tell this every time when we do Creative Design Studio, because I still hear so many people say that they don't know how to season their stamp sets. There are 3 ways to season your stamp sets, but here you'll see, oh, and I think I'm slightly off camera. Here you'll see that I have the stamp set on the block, and I'm just rubbing it on my hand. That is to remove that film that's on it in manufacturing. That film, no matter how much you clean it, does not come off, so that is one of the best ways. I also often use a rub and remove eraser to remove it, or you can also stamp it many times on a piece of scrap paper until it has removed. The next tip that I'm about to share with you, I snagged the term from my upline called the Michael Jackson moonwalk, and that is what I'm doing here. Do you see how I'm carefully pulling that stamp set off the block as if I'm doing the Michael Jackson moonwalk? Our stamps are designed to stick to the block, so if you're not careful when you're removing them from the block, you can tear your stamp set. And I had someone at my retreat do that this weekend with one of their sets. So I was like, that's another tip I'm going to share. So don't forget the Michael Jackson moonwalk the next time you're removing a stamp set from the block. Here we're going to banner these pieces by making a slit up the center on the end and meeting it on both sides. That way you have an even banner. Next, we're going to start stamping these pieces. Now remember, I have the cushion underneath this all-purpose mat, so I get a nice crisp image. And I found it was easier to stamp the greetings first and then the autumn, but you can do it in whichever order works best for you. Look at how fun these go together, so quick and easy. One of the 4 cards for card number 1, I wanted to do some embossing on these leaves. So before I start adding the color to the leaves, I am going to go ahead and do some heat embossing. So this will be a perfect time for me to share some tips about heat embossing. Comment below if you've done heat embossing before. So here I have our supplies: Versamark, the embossing powder, a little tray. You can use a paper plate or a piece of folded cardstock too instead of the tray. I'm using my embossing buddy in the bottom of my tray. That just helps to keep static. And I'm also doing my embossing buddy or my anti-static pouch on all the pieces that I'm going to emboss as well. Okay, so now I am going to get my stamp on the black, and we're going to use the Versamark. You know, the Versamark is a real sticky, almost like a glue type substance that you use when you are doing embossing, and you're not really going to see much here. Oops, get my head in the way. You're not going to see much here because it's clear, right? But I can see it, and you're going to see it more when I put the embossing powder on it. So I am doing the 2 sets of leaves, and I'm going to do some words on the banner there. I'm going to emboss those as well. So I also noticed that I waited a little bit too much time in between stamping them. So you see, I guess I waited to do the words because I was running out of time, and then it gets dry, and then your embossing powder doesn't stick as well. Okay, so look at how pretty that is. Oh my goodness, and we haven't even heat embossed it yet. Look how pretty. So you know, when you use embossing powder, you have to heat set it because otherwise it will just wipe off. Okay, so I have my all-purpose mat here. I'm making sure that I don't have any embossing powder on it. Now, one thing that I want to note is that you're going to see I'm going to grab some tweezers here in a minute because it got really hot and it was too hard to handle. One of the things that I forgot about or didn't think about when I was doing my heat embossing was that the all-purpose mat is heat safe, right? But my Versamat underneath with the cushion side up was not. So it did, the all-purpose mat protected it some, but it did almost start to melt it. So that's a little tip. Take your Versamat out from underneath before you do that. Now you notice here I'm heating from the bottom and from the top, especially when you're working on a white daisy paper. You don't want to burn your paper or yellow it. So by going underneath your project, see how I'm doing here, I can get that a little closer and a little hotter, but I am not going to burn my paper. Now we are going over this with the inks and the sponges, so you wouldn't really notice it if you do, but you do want to typically heat from the underside of your paper, especially with white daisies, so that you don't yellow your paper. So now I'm going to bring in my words because I had to wait and do those. I couldn't wait to do them, or my other pieces were going to dry too much that the embossing powder would not have worked. So here I'm stamping in my words, and this is going to be hard because I can't really see. You can just faintly see it there if you look closely. So I'm kind of stamping blindly. And then I'm going to do heat emboss this. Another tip that I can give you about heat embossing is to make sure that you move your embossing powder and your tray far away. Okay, and there's another little tip. You see how I dipped my brush on my anti-static pouch? That helps to remove the little pieces that may, embossing powder grains that may be where I don't want them. The other important tip that I was saying is that you want to move your embossing powder and your tray away from your heat gun. Otherwise, you could set that whole tray of gold embossing powder and it'll set to your tray, right? So make sure you move it out of your way. So how fun is that? Heat embossing is so much fun, and I know often people don't think to do it anymore, but this technique is coming back and is becoming the popular thing. So give heat embossing a try, and if you need any help, comment below and let me know. Barbara and I are happy to help you with any tips that you may need. Now we are ready to start adding some color to these leaves. Can you see the ones that are heat embossed versus the ones that were stamped in mocha? These leaves look so pretty when you add the color. And you know, there's nothing, I'm not being particular about anything. I'm just adding in a little bit of color to each of them. They are so pretty when they're done. Now we are ready to start assembling, and I'm going to put card number 1, the first example, together just as the workshop guide. You see here, I have such a hard time putting things straight. I had to get my Versamat out, and I still think I might even be a little crooked, my friends. And we're going to banner that toffee piece, and I am just following the workshop instructions. I was trying to figure out why that piece was so long. I think I ended up trimming it a little bit. You'll see when you put yours together. I thought it just looked too big, but I think they put it behind the white piece, but instead I trimmed mine. Look at how fun that is. Now we're going to take our paprika ink in these little arrows, and we're going to use our gel pen to put these dots on here. So fun. Now I probably would glue that arrow down before I put my dots, because you see I wiped them all off on that little all-purpose mat down there. Now we are ready to start assembling card number 1 the second way. And here you'll notice that the base setup of this card is pretty similar to the last one. The only difference is that I'm going to use those embossed pieces on this one. And I'm not going to use that one little gold banner piece above the greetings, above the autumn greeting, the words, because I thought that it was just too much yellow, and I really wanted the gold embossing powder to pop and the leaves on the words in the leaves, and I felt like adding that extra little honey butter piece above the words took away from the effect that I was looking for. So now here I go with that arrow again, and you see this time I glued it down before I added in the white gel pen. Look at how beautiful that is, and I just love the sparkle of that embossing powder. You'll notice here that my lighting is not the greatest, so I do apologize, but hey, I got some new fancy lights that are really gonna help me to be able to record in the evening. So now you're gonna want that 3 1/4 by 9 piece of white daisy cardstock that I had in the extra cuts, and you're either gonna fold it in half or you are going to score it at 4 1/2. Okay, so either score it at 4 1/2 or fold it in half. And you see here, I'm just chose to fold it right in half. This is going to be so much fun. You could add a gift card in here. You could add a little extra message. It's just going to be an extra fun, fancy fold element, interactive element to this card. So for card number 1, the third way, we are putting that 3 1/4 by 9 piece of cardstock on the top, and now we're going to assemble very similar to the way we did in the past, but big tip here, don't put adhesive on the entire portion of this piece here, because if you do, you're not going to be able to open this little flap that we made. So we're only putting the adhesive on the part that's going to go over the honey butter so that the sides are free. Okay, and the card's going to continue to get assembled just the way we assembled the others. For this one, I did add in that extra piece of honey butter that I didn't use on the embossed piece, but I did add it here because it does pop with the other colors, the pine and the mocha there. So fun. Look at how cute this is. So it looks just like the others, but instead it's got this secret opening. So again, I'm using the arrow, coloring it with the ink. And here I did decide to stamp some leaves on the inside. You see how I lined them up the way I wanted them, and then I picked them up with the block. That's another little tip. And because I hadn't used these ones yet, and see, look, good thing I tested it because I stamped it backwards. But you know, stamping it backwards like that is actually a fun way to color in a stamp, and then you can stamp the outline over it. Super fun. So my mistake brought you another little tip, but nonetheless, I had done it on a scrap piece of paper. So how fun is that? I also decided to do it on the inside of the other portion as well. Super cute. Add my dots in. And this one is done. And we will move on to card number 1, the fourth way. For card number 1, the fourth way, I chose to have it horizontal versus vertical. So you will have some extra cuts that you'll need in order to complete this card. I also used the gold glitter paper as my background. Now, in a future card, I'm going to show you how to gut your paper. So if you don't know how to do that, I am going to show that in a future card. I'm assembling this one very similar to how I did in the past. However, I did decide to have this one. So here I go. I'm going to cut that extra paper. I did decide to have this one horizontally instead of vertically. Super fun. And that gold glitter paper really makes it pop. You'll also notice that I turned the pieces over. So the bottom piece of the mocha is the mocha side up, and the little piece is the leaf side up, right? So just keep in mind our paper is two-sided, so you always have multiple options on which way to design your cards. This rub and remove eraser works perfect for cleaning up any extra adhesive. And I am bringing in that honey butter piece again here, just like the example has, and I'm trimming it there. Super, super fun. Oh my goodness, these cards. I am absolutely in love with these cards, but I do have to say that I cannot believe that it is fall already. Like, kids are going back to school. Can you believe it? I cannot believe it. Do you have kids in school? Have they gone back to school yet? It's just crazy to me. I've been so busy doing weekend craft retreats and things going on this summer that, like, I don't even know where the summer went. It's just gone. Tell us in the comments what you've been doing this summer. What was your favorite thing that you did? What are you most looking forward to for fall? All right, my friends, you'll see here we are just about done. I'm doing that arrow with the ink, and I'm going to adhere that down. I decided not to put in the toffee piece on this one. You see, I just put the arrow down at the bottom. I just thought it was too much with that toffee piece on this one. And look at how fun that is. All right, my friends, I will see you in card number 2. I left the ending here to this video just for a little fun. You guys all know how I fuss with things. Well, here's a little bloopers. This is me trying to figure out how I wanted to take a picture of these cards.